Take a closer look at your hot sauce if you're having one. I know people treat it like a quick decision, grab the bottle tap, the base, pour a line of heat across whatever's on the plate. It happens fast, almost instinctively, and that speed is exactly where the trouble hides. Hot sauce hits with color, tang, and heat before your brain has time to question what's actually inside the bottle. Recent recalls show just how easy it is for mistakes to slide under that rhythm. A familiar brand ends up filled with the wrong formula. Another turns up with undisclosed allergens. A trendy favorite gets pulled for plastic fragments. Older imports resurface in reports tied to heavy metal contamination. Each issue lands differently, but they all share one problem: the consumer never sees it coming because the product moves quicker than caution. So slow down for a moment. Let's put the rush aside and look at what really happened inside these bottles. Here are the 5 hot sauce brands you must avoid at all costs. Number 1. Texas Pete. In early 2025, inspectors discovered something unsettling inside certain bottles of Texas Pete habanero buffalo sauce. The liquid wasn't the recipe printed on the front. Instead of the expected blend, some bottles actually held a sriracha pepper sauce that included sodium bisulfite, a sulfite preservative not declared on that label. A related issue surfaced in selected lots of sweet habanero, where the bottled contents didn't match the aging pepper formula promised on the artwork. Misbottling isn't common yet. When it happens, the consequences fall most heavily on people who rely on the allergen list as a safety net, and that mismatch between appearance and reality shifts the ground under anyone who trusts familiar brands to keep their process tight. Misbottling creates a silence between intention and outcome. A shopper expects one flavor, a production line fills a bottle with another. The mismatch doesn't shout. It slips through without a visual cue, without a scent that immediately raises suspicion, without anything obvious to warn the person pouring it over dinner. A short pause emerges once you read the recall details because a question surfaces: how would anyone at home ever know that the bottle they bought wasn't the formula they intended to consume? That tension lands strangely. It's not fear, not panic, but a thin unease that spreads across the mind the more you realize how much trust is placed in the accuracy of the label. Sulfites are not trivial for people sensitive to them. They may influence breathing, they may tighten airways, they may provoke headaches or chest pressure, especially in older adults with asthma or long-term respiratory issues. A tiny amount can start a chain reaction the consumer doesn't expect, and that risk intensifies when the ingredient never appears in the allergen list on the back panel. Trust leans heavily on transparency. Older shoppers often read fine print carefully because their bodies require that vigilance. They check for dairy, they check for gluten, they check for preservatives. They read slowly, they reread, they examine cap seals and expiration dates. The label becomes a small contract between company and consumer. What's written is what's inside. Picture an older man in the grocery aisle. His breathing is steady that morning. His doctor told him to monitor sulfites because they sometimes make his chest tighten. He avoids wines with heavy preservatives. He avoids dried fruit unless it's clearly labeled. He picks up the Texas Pete habanero buffalo bottle because he loves the punch it gives to grilled chicken. He rotates it under the fluorescent lights. He scans the ingredient list. No sulfites mentioned. The reassurance is immediate. He nods to himself, slips the bottle into the basket, and moves on. Nothing about the weight of the bottle, the feel of the plastic, the look of the lid, or the scent through the sealed cap suggests anything unusual. He pays heads home, sets the bottle in his pantry, and doesn't give the decision another thought. Kitchen moments rarely leave enough room for second guessing. People pop open the lid. They drizzle a line over wings. They toss it into a quick marinade. They add a streak across a sandwich. Each action is fast, almost instinctive. The sauce looks right thick, glossy, that red-orange sheen, familiar across dozens of spicy condiments. The viscosity matches expectation, not too runny, not overly syrupy. The smell reads as a blend of peppers and vinegar, bright and sharp, but no different from hundreds of other hot sauces lining American shelves. Nothing about the color or aroma hints that the recipe inside that bottle came from a different batch than the one described on the label. Everything feels normal until the recall notice appears later on a newsfeed or a small printed sign taped to the grocery store entrance. Misbottling shakes people not because the flavor changes dramatically, but because the error hides behind the illusion of normalcy. You can taste heat, you can sense acidity, you can smell peppers, you can observe the color. Yet none of those sensory markers reveal whether the recipe contains an ingredient your body can't handle. That lack of visible evidence creates a quiet kind of vulnerability. The bottle becomes something you can't quite verify on your own. Shoppers don't have lab equipment. They don't have ingredient testing kits. They have trust in sight and routine, and those tools aren't enough when the internal process of a factory slips. Awareness won't remove every risk, but it reshapes how you choose. A familiar brand still earns loyalty, yet it deserves periodic scrutiny, especially if you depend on precise labels to safeguard your health. A recall isn't a condemnation of an entire company. It's a reminder that even established names can make mistakes. So take this segment as a calm nudge, not a panic trigger. Check lot codes occasionally. Glance at recall notices once in a while. Protect the space between what you expect and what ends up on the plate. Los Calientes Verde. A family gathers for dinner while a bottle of Los Calientes Verde moves casually around the table, and the drizzle over roasted vegetables shines with the kind of confidence people rarely question in everyday meals. A father shakes it once. A faint tick slips through the air. No one hears it. The sound disappears under conversation swallowed by routine and trust. Hot ones as Los Calientes Verde and Rojo were recalled in early 2025 after inspectors determined certain batches could contain plastic fragments shed from worn components on the bottling line. The FDA labeled it a Class 2 event, pointing toward potential injury hidden inside a sauce thick enough to mask anything smaller than a seed. The recall didn't arise from peppers or vinegar or spices. It came from mechanical strain, tucked deep inside a system pushed faster than its gears preferred. A sauce with this kind of cultural footprint doesn't move at a gentle pace. Once a guest coughs on camera or praises its flavor, mid-episode online orders surge in minutes. Retailers demand rush shipments. Distributors tighten schedules. Production managers receive revised forecasts that stack higher each week. A line once balanced by steady cycles now absorbs hours of uninterrupted motion. Heat climbs. Vibration intensifies. Plastic gaskets flex repeatedly under pressure. Small scrapers slide against the same metal edges thousands of times per shift. The stress builds slowly until a sliver breaks free too small to set off alarms, large enough to matter once swallowed. Thick sauces hide problems well. Their density blunts the sharpness of anything unexpected. Their opacity disguises irregular shapes. Their swirl of herbs and chili particles creates camouflage that even experienced eyes struggle to penetrate. Automated sensors monitor temperature and quantity, yet they can't detect a fragment embedded in a texture meant to feel rustic and robust. The line keeps moving. Bottles keep filling. Pallets keep shipping. The microscopic slip travels unnoticed across state lines and into household kitchens. The family at the table has no access to any of that. They taste brightness, not mechanical fatigue. They judge freshness, not equipment wear. A child dips a carrot into the green streak and smiles at the tang. A mother mixes the sauce into rice to soften its sharp edge. A father praises the balance and adds another drizzle. Their experience forms around sensory confidence, color, smell, flavor, all of which remain unchanged even when something within the sauce has shifted beyond what the recipe intended. Understanding the slip requires stepping onto the factory floor. Machinery ages by pressure, not carelessness. Gaskets weaken after repeated flexing. Scrapers dull as they skim residue hour after hour. Bearings heat up until friction outpaces lubrication. Maintenance crews schedule inspections, yet those windows shrink whenever demand accelerates. A promotion on a Thursday evening can alter an entire weekend's production tempo. A distributor calling for expedited pallets forces the line to run longer than planned. The difference between safe output and contamination becomes the width of a worn plastic edge. When such a fragment enters the product stream, no scent alerts the consumer. No flavor signals the fault. The sauce remains smooth. The smell stays bright. The color holds steady. Yet a shard can cut the mouth lodge between dental work or slide down the throat before anyone senses the mistake. Older adults face the highest risk because reflexes slow with age and dense textures mask subtle variations in mouthfeel. A small foreign object doesn't announce itself. It waits for the wrong moment. The broader truth extends beyond one brand. Scaling a sauce requires scaling the machinery behind it, and scaling machinery introduces stress points invisible to the public. A recipe may be perfect, but production depends on equipment that needs rest, recalibration, and careful pacing. When a product rides the momentum of celebrity attention, that pacing collapses. The factory must run faster. Quality control must stretch thinner. One overlooked vibration turns into a recall 2 months later. The family clears their plates without incident. They return the bottle to the pantry satisfied and unaware. Their trust remains intact because the evening moved as it always does, warm, familiar, untroubled. Yet the recall uncovers a truth they never see. Even the most polished popular sauces falter when industrial speed outruns industrial stability. And if a brand with national attention and robust resources can slip under that weight, the smaller producers' lean staff, tighter margins, fewer safeguards face their own vulnerabilities, shaped by a different type of pressure waiting in the next story. Number 3. Benny's Vesta Dry Hot Sauces. I used to trust dry chili powders more than sauces because they felt clean, simple, and impossible to tamper with. Just heat, just peppers, nothing hidden where eyes couldn't reach. That belief held firm for years, right up until the recall notices exposed how a blend can carry something no spice lover ever expects. In January 2024, multiple varieties of Benny's Vesta Dry Hot Sauces, Ghost Hot Reaper Scorpion. Very hot were pulled from shelves after regulators confirmed they contained undeclared wheat flour. The wheat wasn't printed on the label. The warning arrived only after tests showed the blends posed a real risk for people with wheat allergies or celiac disease. A product known for its purity had carried a contradiction from the start. Dry spices lure trust because their appearance looks honest. The powder rests bright and textured, flecked with chili fragments that suggest nothing beyond heat and plant matter. You smell fire. You sense sharpness. You see the confidence of dried peppers crushed into something direct. But wheat flour folds into that landscape with perfect stealth, fine, pale, and invisible in the density of ground chili. It doesn't clump. It doesn't dull the aroma. It doesn't shift the color. Nothing about it warns the hand scattering a pinch over a hot pan. Wheat enters blends like this through cracks in the production system most consumers never see. Anti-caking agents sometimes use flour bases. Certain suppliers stabilize chili mixtures with pre-added starch. Grinding equipment might switch between seasoning formulas containing wheat and spice formulas that don't rely on cleaning cycles that lose effectiveness when schedules tighten. Small craft brands depend on upstream processors to supply consistent ingredients. And when one of those partners mislabels or omits a component, the final product inherits the error without any visible trace. People use powders like these precisely because they feel safe. Someone avoiding vinegar-based sauces chooses dry heat for comfort. Someone with stomach sensitivity turns to spice blends because they seem gentle on digestion. Someone with celiac disease reads hot sauce labels obsessively and trusts chili powder as the last refuge of ingredient clarity. The recall shattered that assumption. A person could sprinkle the blend across eggs each morning, add it to soups at night, and never realize they were ingesting wheat day after day until symptoms accumulated hiddenly. Allergen exposure through powders is subtle. Reactions don't always begin with drama. They start with fatigue, rashes, stomach distress signs, easy to misinterpret. Yet the cumulative harm grows because spices are used frequently in small amounts. A hidden allergen doesn't need intensity, it needs repetition. That repetition builds until the body reaches a threshold the consumer never sees coming. Behind the scenes, the industry operates with more complexity than labels reveal. Small batch brands emphasize handcrafted character, but many rely on contract facilities where equipment produces multiple seasonings in the same week. Wing rubs with flour chili blends without marinades that use stabilizers and powders that don't. In spaces like these, one mislabeled ingredient upstream becomes everyone's problem downstream. It isn't negligence so much as structural vulnerability. Thin margins, tight timelines, and suppliers whose documentation becomes the only line of defense between purity and contamination. Benny T's Vesta promised a straight shot of dry heat pepper intensity without distractions. The recall exposed how fragile that promise becomes when the chain behind it stretches across suppliers, grinders, mixers, and storage rooms that don't share the same discipline. A jar of deep red flakes can look flawless while carrying something that changes the product's entire safety profile. Consumers can't detect the difference. They rely solely on the label, and when the label fails, the risk moves straight into the home. Even now, when I open any jar of chili powder, I still admire the aroma rising from the surface. The heat still feels honest. But a small part of me follows the spice backward, past the peppers, past the grinder blades, back into the upstream choices that decide whether a blend remains what the label claims it is. Clarity doesn't ruin the pleasure of dry heat. It strengthens it. The jar closes with a soft click, and the lesson settles deeper than the heat itself. Purity on the label isn't always the purity in the blend. And once that idea takes hold, your attention naturally shifts outward to the sauces traveling farther, crossing borders and carrying complications shaped by worlds beyond a spice room. Delucato Black Label Reserve. A customs worker lifts a crate from a pallet marked for inspection, the wood slightly damp from its long trip across the sea. He tilts one bottle to check the label. The glass feels cool. The liquid inside looks dark and steady. Nothing unusual. He signs the form and moves on because the line behind him stretches long. El Yucateco Black Label Reserve later appeared in safety notices after reports involving foreign debris inside certain imported hot sauces, a risk shaped by long supply chains and inconsistent handling standards between exporting and importing checkpoints. It wasn't an ingredient problem. It wasn't a recipe flaw. It came from gaps in the journey. Imported sauces travel far. They move across farms, grinding stations, bottling rooms, consolidation centers, and ports. Each place follows different rules. Each step uses different machines. A bottle may be filled in one facility and packed in another. A label may be printed by a contractor that never sees the sauce itself. Oversight spreads thin across miles of ocean. Things slip through. Contamination in dark sauces hides easily. A tiny shard blends into the ink-black liquid. A grain of hardened sediment settles near the bottom where no one sees it. A bit of worn metal from grinding equipment mixes with charred peppers and disappears into the thickness. The sauce pours smoothly, the smoky scent rises, the flavor hits bold and rich. Nothing reveals the trouble. Distance makes these issues harder to track. Production lines in one region share equipment with other products. Cleaning cycles vary by staff and shift. Some facilities rely on older machinery. A loose screw can create filings. A cracked hopper can release splinters. When the sauce is thick and black, the risk hides even more. Inspectors check bottles. They check seals. They check labels. They don't always detect something that sits deep in the darkness. Transit adds more stress. Pallets sit in humid shipping containers. Boxes shift during storms. Bottles rattle against each other. A weak cap can loosen. A tiny piece of wood from a crate can scrape into a broken seal. A fragment of packaging can cling to the inner rim. Small changes add up before the product reaches the importer's warehouse. Once the sauce arrives in local stores, it looks strong and steady. Black Label Reserve has a deep, smoky color that feels confident. The texture is thick. The aroma has a charred edge. It tastes bold on tacos or grilled meat. None of those traits show the risks created earlier in the journey. The bottle on the shelf carries the illusions of stability and tradition, not the record of everything it passed through. People buy imported sauces because they trust the flavor. A late-night commuter grabs a bottle from a gas station shelf for convenience. He wants something quick, something familiar, something that tastes like the food he grew up with. He doesn't know the sauce traveled thousands of miles. He doesn't know the oversight behind its splinters across nations. He doesn't imagine a fragment could sit inside a liquid this dark. Older adults face higher risks. Bite force weakens with age. Reaction time slows. Foreign debris inside a thick sauce can go unnoticed until the moment it touches the throat. A sharp edge can cut. A hard object can cause choking. Even small fragments carry harm when the sauce's texture masks them completely. Regulators handle these cases when reports surface. Importers issue recalls. Stores pull products. Consumers read notices days or weeks later. The chain responds, but the path behind the bottle remains hard to trace. Long supply routes produce blind spots that paperwork alone cannot fix. A single flaw introduced in one step can pass through every checkpoint without detection. The customs worker never sees these outcomes. He moves crates, he checks labels, he follows the routine. His job handles volume, not minute detail. He trusts the system behind him forms standards, codes, inspections. Yet the system depends on alignment across borders, and alignment breaks easily when dozens of facilities share responsibility. Black Label Reserve still has its devoted fans. Its smoky edge remains distinct. Its heat stands out, but trust needs more than flavor. It needs consistency along the whole journey, not just inside the final bottle. Distance shapes risk. Dark sauces hide it. The story doesn't end with imports. It shifts towards something more subtle. Not debris, not allergens, not machinery. The next brand carries a different danger, one built from marketing promises that shine brighter than the truth they cover. Number 5. Truff Hot Sauce. More than 70% of shoppers admit they judge food quality by packaging. Another 40% assume higher price means safer ingredients. Truff thrives inside that exact space where perception outruns detail, and the shine of the bottle speaks louder than the liquid inside. Independent reviewers and nutrition analysts have long pointed out that Truff Hot Sauce is built on a base of canola oil, added sugar and synthetic truffle aroma, all packaged inside a bottle, designed to feel luxurious. The brand leans on matte black surfaces, gold geometric caps, and cinematic marketing to project the idea of rarity. The sauce looks premium before anyone reads the label. The product succeeds on impression first, formulation second. Truff markets itself as indulgence. It uses words like elevated, refined, and forward heat. The design mimics high-end cosmetics more than pantry staples. The bottle has weight. The typography feels intentional. The truffle imagery signals exclusivity. These choices form a story long before someone tastes a drop, and the story works because the human brain responds to cues faster than ingredient lists. People sense luxury. People trust polish. People see the price and assume value. Yet the formula behind that image tells a simpler truth. The sauce relies heavily on canola oil, a cheap industrial oil that oxidizes quickly and turns harsh under heat. Sugar rounds off the edges. Truffle flavor, usually synthetic, adds aroma without the cost of real truffles. Xanthan gum locks the texture into a glossy, photogenic sheen. The heat comes from red chilies but sits lower than expected because the sweetness carries the weight. The bottle tastes pleasant, but it tastes engineered. It tastes curated to match the brand's story more than the pepper's natural strength. Marketing overshadows that reality. Influencers unbox Truff in slow motion. Limited editions drop like fashion items. Gift sets pair the sauce with premium knives and dark marble boards. Commercials run in soft light where the sauce pours thicker than most oils. Every detail pushes the viewer toward one idea: this is not regular hot sauce. The price reinforces the point. The visuals hold it steady. The brand leaves little room for doubt. Shoppers absorb that message fast. They see the matte finish first, they see the geometric cap, they see the confident black bottle standing out from cheaper plastics. Someone preparing for a special dinner might choose Truff because it looks like the safest choice among the crowded row. The bottle promises sophistication. It promises intention. It promises special occasion quality through design alone. They place it into the cart without a second thought. Ingredient concerns stay silent until digestion pushes back. Canola oil can feel heavy for older adults. Its oxidation profile makes it unstable under heat, especially when drizzled onto hot meals. Synthetic truffle aroma can irritate sensitive stomachs. The added sugar builds sweetness that masks the true spice level, which leads to repeated use and higher intake. These issues aren't immediately dramatic. They're subtle, they accumulate. The body reacts over weeks, not minutes. The health risk comes from repetition. Truff tastes smooth enough to use often. It blends easily into mayonnaise. It shines on fried chicken. It spreads across fries with a creamy richness that hides its oil-heavy base. A person might use it daily without noticing the strain. They might think the discomfort comes from the meal, not the sauce. They might not connect dizziness or bloating with something that feels premium. Branding's strongest power is the silence it creates around ingredients that would raise questions in cheaper products. The pattern becomes clear the moment someone steps back. A brand built on luxury can still rely on shortcuts. A bottle coated in elegance can still hold a formula that leans on oil, sugar, and artificial aroma. Truff is not unsafe by design, but its identity draws attention away from the places where scrutiny should live. It uses silence where transparency should stand. It uses texture where clarity would matter more. It uses shine where the substance grows thin. The sauce still attracts fans. The flavor still pleases many. The marketing still feels sharp, but the cost of that image rests on the consumer's blind trust. A bottle can look refined. A cap can feel heavy. A brand can glow under soft lighting. None of those things guarantee integrity. And sometimes the prettiest bottle leaves the quietest questions behind. After moving through recalls, hidden allergens, supply chain flaws, and glossy illusions, the pattern becomes clear: risk often hides where confidence feels strongest. Yet, not every bottle plays that game. Some brands anchor their heat in honesty, clean sourcing, and steady craft. Now we step toward the sauces that earn their trust. Number 6. Cholula Hot Sauce. The first thing you notice about Cholula isn't heat, it's steadiness. The wooden cap, the warm colors, the gentle weight of the bottle, everything signals a sauce that doesn't need theatrics to make its point. That calm presence reflects how the product is actually made, because Cholula's biggest strength has always been its consistency. Real peppers, real vinegar, no filler oils, no artificial smoke. A recipe that hasn't drifted into shortcuts even as the brand spread across diners' grocery shelves and morning tables. Cholula relies on arbol and Pekin peppers sourced through long-term supplier relationships with traceable cultivation standards. These are peppers grown for heat and flavor, not volume. The company keeps a tight rein on blending acidity and fermentation timing, which gives the sauce its balanced profile, the kind of heat that builds gradually instead of hitting all at once. That stability matters more than people realize, especially for older consumers who want flavor without harsh burn or digestive blowback. A grounded sauce like this works because it treats ingredients as the foundation, not accessories. There's no seed oil base clouding the bottle, no sugar added to mask weak chilies, no truffle essence, no gimmicks. The sharpness comes from natural acidity. The warmth comes from the peppers. The aroma comes from fermentation that's measured rather than rushed. It's a sauce built in a straight line: peppers, vinegar, seasoning, bottling. Nothing hidden along the way. You taste that honesty on food. A few drops on eggs in the morning add brightness without bitterness. A line across roasted potatoes brings out warmth instead of sting. Even on grilled chicken, the heat stays controlled. It climbs, then settles, never punching through the flavors around it. Many sauces claim versatility. Cholula actually lives it. That may sound simple, but simplicity is what breaks first when companies scale. Yet this one holds its ground. The human side explains why it's earned trust. People buy it because it behaves the same way every time. A grandmother who wants a mild spark in her soup, a trucker grabbing breakfast at a highway diner, a home cook seasoning a pot of beans. These moments add up, and none of them depend on marketing illusions. The sauce speaks for itself through reliability. Safety follows the same pattern. Transparent labeling, long-term ingredient sourcing, processing environments designed for low variability, heat levels that don't fluctuate, no surprise allergens, no hidden stabilizers. For a product as widely used as this, predictability becomes its protection. Cholula won't shout. It doesn't need to. It stays steady, and for anyone tired of sauces that promise more than they deliver, that steadiness is exactly what earns the bottle its place on the good list. Number 7. Yellowbird Hot Sauce. Yellowbird began in Austin, Texas, but its story doesn't sound like a marketing team invention. It started with 2 people making hot sauce in a small kitchen because they couldn't find anything that matched the way they wanted to eat simple, honest, and free from the shortcuts that hide in so many commercial blends. The early batches were cooked in small pots. The peppers came from nearby growers. The goal wasn't to impress stores, it was to build a sauce they would actually use every day. That beginning shaped the philosophy Yellowbird still follows. They build their sauces around whole fruits, whole vegetables, and fresh peppers, not extracts. They avoid artificial sweeteners and synthetic flavors. They skip preservatives whenever formulation allows. The ingredient lists read like something pulled from a farmer's stall rather than a commodity warehouse. Carrots, tangerines, garlic, habaneros, serranos. The sauces have body because the produce has body. The color comes from plants, not dyes. The heat grows from natural capsicum, not chemical isolation. Yellowbird treats freshness as a principle rather than a selling point. They keep the textures thick because that's how whole foods behave when blended, and they don't thin the sauce to chase uniformity. The result feels more like a bright puree than a processed condiment, and that has become its signature. Many people describe the flavor as alive not because it's flashy, but because it retains the small imperfections of real ingredients. A little more carrot in one bottle, a little more citrus in the next. That variation makes the sauce feel human. Online praise reflects this authenticity. Longtime customers talk about using Yellowbird to replace 3 or 4 other sauces at once because it feels gentler on the stomach. Others mention how refreshing it is to taste heat that doesn't burn flat but instead moves through layers of sweetness, acidity, and vegetal depth. People note how the habanero version balances fruit and fire without tipping into harshness. Many highlight how the serrano sauce uplifts breakfast dishes, especially eggs, without overwhelming them. Reviewers across platforms repeatedly identify the same strengths: clean labels, real produce, and a kind of sincerity that's rare in a market filled with flashy, extract-based formulas. The praise is not loud, it's steady. It comes from everyday cooks, not hype cycles. The loyalty surrounding Yellowbird grows because it feels like a product made by people who genuinely cook, not a brand chasing trends. Yellowbird doesn't need a dramatic story. Its strength lies in the way it honors simple ingredients and treats flavor like something worth protecting. And that quiet consistency has earned it a place among the hot sauces people trust without hesitation. Number 8. Torchbearer Sauce. Torchbearer builds its reputation on performance, not presentation. The bottle looks modest, almost plain, yet the sauce inside behaves with a discipline that many premium brands fail to reach. The first thing that stands out is the consistency. It pours thick, steady, and controlled, no separation, no oily ring, no watery drift at the edges. The blend stays intact even after weeks in the fridge. The ingredient list supports that reliability. Torchbearer avoids filler oils and leans heavily on real peppers, vinegar, vegetables, and minimal stabilizers. The flavor doesn't hide behind sugar. It doesn't lean on artificial aromas. The heat arrives clean and rises in a straight line instead of spiking or burning out too fast. That stability makes it easy to use on hot foods because the flavor doesn't collapse under steam or high temperature. Cooking reveals a lot. The sauce clings to grilled meat without slipping off. It thickens slightly when heated, which helps it hold its shape in stir-fries or oven dishes. A thin layer brushed on chicken stays where it should instead of sliding to the bottom of the tray. The balance stays intact whether it meets oil broth or dry heat. The peppers keep their brightness long after most sauces would taste flat. Texture also sets it apart. The blend feels smooth but still alive with small bits of vegetables adding weight without turning gritty. The mouthfeel remains stable from first drop to final bite. It behaves predictably on tacos, rice bowls, roasted vegetables, and eggs. Some sauces overwhelm soft foods. Others vanish into heavy ones. Torchbearer finds the middle point, contributing heat and flavor without stealing the entire profile. Performance extends to dosage. A little goes far, but not in a punishing way. The burn doesn't bully the tongue. It builds with discipline, then fades with clean edges. That control makes it usable for older adults who want strong flavor without lingering discomfort. It also avoids the sharp metallic bite that extract-based sauces sometimes carry. The shelf life behavior matters too. Torchbearer holds color well and doesn't turn dull or brown quickly. The acids protect the peppers without creating an overpowering sourness. Even the cap stays clean longer than most because the sauce isn't too thin to run. In a market crowded with glossy branding and engineered flavors, Torchbearer stands out for something simpler, a sauce that performs exactly the way a hot sauce should. Reliable, steady, honest in the way it moves, tastes, and cooks. Hot sauce should sharpen a meal, not complicate your life. After moving through recalls, shortcuts, unstable oils, and polished illusions, the pattern becomes impossible to ignore. Heat is the easy part. Honesty is the real challenge. Every bottle on the shelf asks for trust long before flavor ever touches the tongue. And today you've seen how quickly that trust can bend under pressure. But the bright side matters just as much. Brands like Cholula, Yellowbird, and Torchbearer remind you that good sauce doesn't need theatrics or tricks. It only needs real peppers, balanced craft, and the courage to stay simple. When you choose better bottles, the difference shows up in the pan on the plate and in how your body feels after the meal. So take this knowledge with you the next time you shop. Read the label, trust your instincts, and let the heat work for you, not against you.
This video does not promote division within the United States or encourage segregation. All content is presented for the purpose of exploration, analysis, and fostering discussion based on current events, public sentiment, and social trends. We fully respect the United States Constitution and all federal regulations. If today's analysis made you think, drop a comment so we can keep the conversations going. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you will never miss our next independent deep dive.